Hey everybody, today we are talking about Google AdSense basics. Specifically, we are talking about the Active View Viewable metric. When I got started in Google AdSense, and frankly until recently, that was a metric that I wasn't familiar with and I didn't know very much about. I was familiar with click-through rate, I was familiar with impressions, a lot of this stuff was familiar, but the Active View Viewable metric was not something that was familiar to me. And I'm just going to show you where I first saw it. I am in my my slides right now, and I'll just show you a report that's of course redacted, but I see a percentage that says Active View Viewable, and then I can see also by day what the Active View Viewable is. And then if you go and look at reports and look at the ads by unit, you can also see the Active View Viewable metric. And for me, most of my stuff in general is around the 65 to 70% range, although in looking at specific ads, some of them have a really low Active View Viewable metric, and some of them are super high, like 100%. And so what does this mean, and what can we glean from it? And how do they even figure out what that percentage is? Like, what does it mean? So to get there, you have to look at first, what an impression is. An impression for an ad is how often somebody gets to your site and then your site requests the information for the ad from the server. It may not completely load up on your site, but that request has been made, and so presumably it either began to load or did load all the way up on your site. But that doesn't mean necessarily that the user saw it. A lot of times the user may get their answer at the top of the web page and may not scroll all the way down to the bottom to see that ad, even though that it's loaded and ready to be seen. It just doesn't get seen because the user doesn't get there. The Active View Viewable metric looks at the number of impressions, but it takes the percentage of those impressions where half of the physical space of the ad, 50%, at least 50% of the ad was viewed by a viewer for at least 1 second. So if the user never sees at least 50% of the ad, or at least or never, just sees the top sliver of it or doesn't see any of it at all, it's not going to count for the Active View Viewable metric. This is something that is useful to advertisers, especially when they're looking at what to bid on particular ad spaces and what impressions are really worth on a page. But it's also useful for publishers because we can tell where on our site the most profitable ad spots are, and also the user behavior, what they are doing on the site. So if I have an ad that is right under the headline that has a really low Active View Viewable metric, I have to wonder what on earth the user is doing when they get there. It seems to me that if somebody loads up a page, that top ad should be viewable 100% of the time. But that's not how it works out in truth. And I think what happens a lot of times is that a user will hit the page, and before everything is loaded, they'll start scrolling down. And I can see how the second ad that you may have, for me, I have an ad under the headline in most cases, and then a couple paragraphs down, I'll have another ad. And that second ad actually tends to be the one that has the highest Active View Viewable percentage. And what that tells me is that when people get to the site, they don't wait for everything to load up before they start scrolling down. And that is how that top ad could get skipped. And we also see that the last ad at the bottom also has a lower percentage for Active View Viewable than the ads in the middle. So for me, I can make some, I think, fairly accurate inferences or deductions based upon these percentages to figure out where my users are spending most of their time on my site. Now, does it mean that I know necessarily how to make the most money off of that information? I don't necessarily, but what it does tell me is that if people aren't seeing the ads, then it's not worthwhile to put it on there, because it is one more thing that I put on the website that has to load up and can slow down the site. Two, having too many ads on a website can also drive down the cost per click amount that we get paid every time someone clicks on one of the ads elsewhere on the site, because there's just not enough competition for all the space I have on my site, supply and demand. And so if it may make no sense whatsoever to have that last ad on the bottom if my viewers just never get there. And in the meantime, I may be hurting the profitability of my site by having extra ad slots on my site that nobody's actually seeing. So is this the end all? Do I know everything about this? Clearly not, but it's a metric that you probably should know and probably should pay attention to, and it's something that I'm going to try and know and pay closer attention to in the future. So that is the Active View Viewable metric, and I challenge you to say that 3 times fast in a row, because I can't. The Active View Viewable, Active View Viewable. It sounds like Volkswagen. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.